she built her life on precision. Every meeting timed, every decision calculated, every seat reserved before she even arrived. People didn't leave things to chance around her. And she didn't either. That's why what happened that night felt so out of place. The restaurant was exactly what she expected. Quiet, exclusive, the kind of place where conversations stayed low and details were handled before you even asked. She walked in with her usual confidence, barely slowing at the entrance as staff greeted her. Her assistant had arranged everything, a private table, no distractions. At least that's what she thought. Her phone buzzed as she moved through the room. Wing Bersher, eyes briefly scanning a message she didn't want to deal with yet. Without looking up properly, she reached the table she believed was hers and sat down, setting her bag beside her chair with practiced ease. Only when she looked up did she realize something was off. Across from her sat a man she didn't know. Next to him, a little girl stared at her with open curiosity, her expression bright and unguarded. The man paused mid-sentence, surprised but calm, his posture steady as if unexpected moments didn't shake him easily. For a second, no one spoke. Then the man gave a small, polite nod. "Think you might have the wrong table." The words were simple, without edge or embarrassment, just a quiet correction. She straightened slightly, her composure returning instantly. "I'm sorry," she said, already reaching for her bag. "That's my mistake." This was how things usually worked. Identify the error, fix it, move on. But before she could stand, the little girl spoke. "Ye for hoveren forverst haver perform for she could stand." "It's okay," she said softly. "You can sit with us." The invitation was so natural, so unexpected, that it caught her completely off guard. She hesitated. In her world, nothing happened without intention. People didn't just invite strangers into their space without reason. But there was no strategy here, no hidden motive, just a child offering a seat like it was the simplest thing in the world. The man glanced at his daughter, then back at her, offering a slight smile. "Only if you want to." She should have left. Every instinct built from years of control told her to move to the correct table, to return to the structure she upped. But something about the moment held her in place. Slowly, she sat back down. "Just for a minute," she said almost to herself. The man nodded, accepting it without question, and the conversation resumed as if nothing unusual had happened. The girl began talking again, her voice light, filled with small details about her day, things that seemed insignificant but were shared with complete honesty. She listened, at first, out of politeness, then without realizing it, with genuine attention. The man responded to every word, not distracted, not rushing her along. He wasn't performing, wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just there, present. She found herself watching them more than speaking, noticing the ease between them. The way the girl leaned slightly toward him when she talked, the way he listened without interruption. It was simple, and somehow that made it rare. Her phone buzzed again, then again she ignored it. Minutes passed, but they didn't feel like time she was losing. Once, nothing was being measured, nothing was being planned. The conversation moved naturally, without direction, without expectation. "You don't talk much," the girl said suddenly, looking at her with a curious tilt of her head. She blinked, slightly surprised. "I talk when I need to." "That sounds boring," the girl replied honestly. "And Fort." The man let out a quiet laugh. "She means you can talk if you want to." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Not because she couldn't, but because she wasn't used to conversations that didn't serve a purpose. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered what it would feel like. If they didn't have to, she told herself she would leave in a minute. That was the plan. A brief pause, a polite interaction, then back to the table that was actually hers. The one prepared, expected, and wait. But minutes passed, and she didn't move. Something about the ease of the moment kept her there, even as her phone continued to buzz quietly beside her. "What do you do?" the man asked, not out of curiosity about status, but in the same tone he used for everything else. Simple, direct. She hesitated for a second. Usually, that question came with assumptions, with recognition, with a shift in how people treated her. But here, there was none of that, just a question. "I run a company," she said. The girl's eyes widened slightly. "A freak and say Paul Shumblil, one for bestom wearing from Paulsen for like? A big one?" She nodded once. "Yes, that sounds like a lot of work," the girl said. "'Tis. You like it?" The question was so straightforward, caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to answer automatically, to say yes, of course, because that was always the answer. But for some reason, the word didn't come out as easily this time. "I do," she said, though it sounded less certain than she expected. The man watched her for a moment, not pushing, not analyzing. Just noticing. "That kind of work doesn't leave much time for mistakes," he said. She let out a small breath. "It doesn't. Then this must feel unusual," he added, gesturing lightly to the table. He glanced around, taking in the scene again. The child, the quiet conversation, the lack of urgency. "It does," she admitted. "And yet you're still here." There was no judgment in his voice, just observation. But it made her pause, because he was right. There was nothing keeping her here except her own choice. Her assistant finally appeared at the edge of the room, scanning quickly until their eyes met. Leaf crossed his face as he approached, slightly out of breath. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," he said. "Koyak's Kof, your table is ready." There was a mix-up. Of course there was. Everything was back in place now. Correct seat, the expected order, the world she understood. She looked down at her phone, then back at the table she had accidentally joined. "Will you come back?" the girl asked suddenly. The question landed softly, but it carried weight. She wasn't used to promises. Not K war for foldable surtuple walls, not personal ones, not like this. "I don't know," she said honestly. Girl nodded, accepting the answer without disappointment. "Okay." The man gave a small smile. "Take care," and simple surtical words, from expectations words. "Okay?" The man gave a small smile. "Take care." Simple words, no expectations attached. She stood up slowly, picking up her bag, aware of how easily she could walk away and let this moment disappear like it never happened. But as she stepped toward her actual table, something didn't sit right. The conversation there felt different. Every word had a purpose again. Her assistant spoke about schedules, upcoming meetings, decisions that needed her attention. She responded, but her focus drifted. Her mind kept returning to the other table, to the way time had slowed, to the way she hadn't needed to be anything other than present. After a few minutes, she stopped listening completely. "Excuse me," she said, standing again before anyone could question it. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked back across the room. The man looked up first, slightly surprised. Girl smiled immediately. "You came back," she says. Time had she sat down. "Just for a little longer," she replied, but something about the way she said it made it feel like more. She didn't check her phone again. Someone who lived by schedules and constant updates, the silence from it should have felt uncomfortable. Instead, it felt quiet in the right way, like something she hadn't realized she needed. The conversation at the table continued naturally, without effort. The girl talked about school, about small things that seemed unimportant but were shared with complete excitement. The man listened, asking simple questions, never interrupting, never rushing her to finish. And for the first time in a long time she found herself doing the same. Not analyzing, not planning what to say next, just listening. "You don't have kids, do you?" the man asked gently, noticing the way she watched. She shook her head. "No." "Wolpaprief free some warn show shabo." He nodded, as if that explained something but didn't press further. "It's different," he said after a moment. "Everything slows down. Show koper persane I will force to pratiable for counter for opaforful will free ditter style." Slows down. Everything slows down. She glanced at him. "Slows down?" Smiled slightly. "You start paying attention to things you used to miss." Her gaze shifted to the girl, who was now carefully arranging something on the table, completely focused on her small. There was no rush in her movements, no concern about what came next. Just attention to the moment she was in. "I don't think I've slowed down in years," she admitted quietly. "Maybe you just didn't have a reason to," he replied. The words stayed with her. She had always believed that slowing down meant falling behind, that if she stopped, even for a moment, everything she had built would start to slip. That control meant constant movement. But sitting here, she wasn't falling behind. She was just still. "Do you ever feel like you missed something?" she asked, the question coming out before she could stop it. He looked at her, considering it. "Sometimes," he said, "but not the important things." "Oh, so do you know what those are?" Riba Wachentring freed. He glanced at his daughter, who was now laughing softly at something only she found amusing. "You feel it," he said simply. Followed his gaze, watching the girl's quiet joy, the ease in her expression, the absence of anything forced. And for a moment, something shifted inside her. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just a small realization. Maybe the things she had been chasing weren't the only things that mattered. "You're thinking too much," the girl said suddenly, looking at her with a knowing expression. She blinked. The girl nodded. "You make this face," she said, mimicking a serious look. The man laughed quietly. "She's very observant." She let out a small breath. Something brief, me toin to a small breath, something close to a real smile forming. "I guess I am." "Not to," the girl said simply. "It's nicer." The simplicity of it almost made her laugh. All her life she had been told to think more, plan more, anticipate more. Now a child was telling her to do the opposite, and somehow it made sense. She leaned back slightly, letting the moment settle without trying to shape it. No expectations, no outcome. And for the first time in a long time, it felt enough. She didn't notice how much time had passed until the restaurant began to quiet down. Tables emptied, conversations faded, and the soft background noise that once filled the room slowly disappeared. At their table, the calm remained unchanged. For once, she wasn't thinking about what came next. She was simply there. The girl leaned slightly against her father, her energy settling after talking for so long. Her small hand rested near the edge of the table, relaxed, comfortable. It was a simple moment, but something about it held her attention more than anything else had that day. "You're smiling," the man said quietly. She paused, almost surprised, as if she hadn't realized it herself. He nodded. "It's different." She looked down slightly, then back at them. He wasn't hot wrong. He wasn't wrong. "It's different." The expression felt unfamiliar, but not forced. It wasn't the polite version she used in meetings or public appearances. "Sju släpper om one kolb likara brown." It was lighter. "I don't do this," she admitted. "Do what?" he asked. "This," she gestured slightly around the table. "Sitting without a reason, talking without an outcome." He gave a small smile. "Maybe that's the reason." She considered that. All her life, every moment had been tied to something. Progress, results, movement forward. Even her conversations were steps towards something else. But here, there was no next step waiting, and somehow it made it meaningful. The girl looked up at her again. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked softly. "Perforal were will for perforal for brain were." This time the question felt different. Not sudden, not unexpected, just honest. She hesitated, but not in the same way as before. It wasn't about uncertainty. It was about understanding what that yes would mean. Her world didn't have space for unplanned moments. "It could. I think I will," she said. The girl smiled immediately, satisfied with the answer. Cool. Satisfied with the answer. The man didn't say anything right away, just watched her for a second, as if recognizing that something had shifted not just in the moment but in her. "Boshing have to for bor bopal for a one." "You don't have to," he said. "Not for us." "I know," she replied, and she did. It was what made the decision different. There was no expectation here, no obligation, just a choice, and for once she wanted to choose it. She stood up slowly, picking up her bag. But this time it didn't feel like she was leaving something behind. It felt like she was carrying something with her, something small, but important. As she stepped away from the table, she paused for just a second. Looking back, the scene was simple: a father and his child, sitting in a quiet restaurant, nothing extraordinary to anyone else. To her, it meant more than she could explain, because in one unexpected mistake, she had found something she hadn't even realized was missing. Not success, not control, but connection. And as she walked out into the night, her phone still silent in her hand, one thought stayed with her, clear and steady. Maybe the life she had built wasn't wrong. But maybe it wasn't complete either, worn,